Okay, there you go.
Have you ever felt like you are constantly giving to others, but never truly feeling fulfilled or appreciated in return? So imagine if instead of feeling drained, you are coming from a place of abundance and where your own needs are met first. So today we are going to explore transformation, the transformative power of self-love and how it can revolutionize the way that you give and receive love. So what we are going to talk about specifically are three things. We are going to talk about how you should be giving from your overflow, what stops us from loving ourselves. So it's about identifying those barriers that keep us from embracing self love and how we can actually then practice self love. So the key is to find some practical steps where you can cultivate self love on a daily basis. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. One day, one of my very first bosses that I worked with when I was and he was also a mentor in my corporate career, said something that really stuck with me. He Back then I had three kids. Now I have four, and they were pretty small. And I was managing a very demanding career as well. And I don't remember exactly why he said this, but probably it was because I looked haggard and tired. But he told me that he said, Debbie, if you don't look after yourself, you're no good to anyone if you're dead. And literally, he was totally 100% serious. I thought he was making a joke, but he was serious. And so when I shrugged it off, I didn't, I was thinking I was invincible and I just let it go. And it took me a long time. I mean, a long time, let's say 30 years, before I really understood what he was saying. Um, and and it actually wasn't until I started taking this personal transformation course, which is the Elite Mentorship Forum, that I really, really got it. And now I realize that to truly care for others, I need to care for myself first. And that I've learned that self love isn't selfish, it's essential. And before that, wasn't so much that way for me. And also, I wanted just to say that when I look back, I realized that I was always the person who was giving to everyone else. My kids and my work came first because they were my top priorities. They were the place where I poured my energy into, and I thought I was doing the right thing. But in the process, I lost myself. I was neglecting my own needs, my own well being, and eventually I lost my own identity. I didn't even know who I was. I had no passion. I just had my work and my kids, and I loved them both. But I did, when I would say, what is my passion? I couldn't tell you. And my marriage suffered as well. And eventually it ended because we didn't take the time to care for each other. And we grew apart. And before I knew it, we were just two people that were living separate lives under the same roof. So now, uh, when I start to feel my cup being depleted and that I'm giving too much to others and not giving myself self-love, any self-love, what I really can notice that I need to fill out that cup. It's very noticeable now because I start to get resentful when I'm giving too much from my own cup and not from my overflow. And so, really, I would say that what you should be saying is self love fuels the love you give. And I just want to know if that might resonate with anybody out there. can you identify with my story and kind of where I'm coming from? All right, Deb, I'm going to pass it over to you so you can
Go ahead.
maybe.
Sony, did you want to say something about that story?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge, that it's self-love is the beginning of any kind of love for others. So if I feel that without that, there cannot be really any true giving to others.
You're
Beautifully
right.
said. Yes, I agree.
That's exactly
Excellent.
what today's about, really. So you got it right on.
Thank you. Karan, did you want to share anything?
Can you hear me? Hello.
I'm sorry.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. First of all, everyone. So
Hello.
I would say I think I can agree with that. It's almost like saying, let's say you want to help. You're walking down the street, you want to help a homeless person. It's like if you don't have the money, how are you going to help the other person? So I think you need to have the resources in the first place, not be able to help the other person. So yeah, kind of resonates with me too.
That's good.
Okay, great. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. And I love the way you use the metaphor of, filling your cup first. So like a little motto I have is like fill your cup first and then you can pour it into others. And I like to think of it, I'm not sure if anyone has seen these, but like a champagne tower where you pour it into the first and it just cascades down. So I like that as a visual for filling your cup first and then letting it spread to others. So
Yeah, can I ask a question?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with the concept that you need to fill your cup first, but like human beings also have the tendency, like once you're pursuing something, you just keep going after it. So till what point, like we need to be filling our cup just to be, and maybe it's not the right word to use. It's like to the other person, it shouldn't look like being narcissistic in nature.
I'm not sure I quite understand. You're asking when we should fill our cup or when does filling our cup, like, it sounds like you're leaning towards like filling our cup is somehow selfish.
Yeah, so till what point we should be keep filling our cup, so that we don't appear selfish to the other person.
Oh, um, yeah, that is a deep conversation actually. And I think that ultimately what happens is we don't want to use self-love as an excuse to be rude or dismiss the needs of others. However, um, to me, that's kind of a question of like boundaries and prioritizing. So I'm sorry, my cat is just climbed here on the table. His tail is getting in the way. But like you don't want to put it's kind of one of those things, right? Because I was just going to say you don't want to put yourself above others, but by not putting yourself above others, I'm saying you have to recognize that you're not more important than anybody, but you do have to prioritize your needs. And that could be a really deep conversation on loving yourself. If you truly love yourself, you're going to have healthy boundaries and you're going to be respecting other people, though, as well. And in relationships, we have to decide, is meeting one of your needs breaking one of my boundaries? That
So
would kind of be the question there. Go ahead, Debbie. What do you
yeah,
have to
no.
add to that?
So
That's how I would see that.
I think we'll get into this a little bit more when we start talking about how we should be giving from our overflow instead of from our cup.
Okay.
So, Deb, why don't you just finish off with your story, and then we can get into how we can use our overflow. And I'm
Okay.
just going to say the little sneak peek is I think that everybody's going to have to decide when they are at their cup is full. But we'll do a little bit of that in after your story. How's that?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and another recommendation maybe is that, like, if you have a question like that, maybe write it down. And if we don't answer it by the time we get to the end, maybe hold on to it and share it then,
Yeah, or post it in the comments
or
too.
post
Isn't it?
in the comments. All
All
right,
right.
excellent. Okay, thank you there. And am I saying your name correct, Karan?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. So anyways, my story of self-love was basically that I grew up in a household that, although it was not perfect, there was a lot of value placed on appearing perfect. And part of that, I think, growing up that way was always to put up a good front, right? Like maybe we didn't always have the same things as our friends or our neighbors, and maybe things were difficult at home. But if we were going somewhere, we would always look our best, right? Get out the best dress, the best shoes, make sure you're done up, and we're all good, right? Even if that wasn't the truth. And so I grew up learning to kind of hide who I was in a way that, like, no matter what was going on, I must always present a happy, totally fine person. Don't let other people know that you're struggling or that you're hurting. And so for me, going through this EMF journey kind of freed me to really take a look at myself, release a lot of limiting beliefs about, am I lovable? And now that I live with this self-love for myself and I do set healthy boundaries, and I'm okay to be vulnerable and to have somebody see me a hot mess, right? It doesn't make me less lovable. It's just that in that moment, I'm a hot mess right now, whatever that might be, right? And I think that what I've also learned through this process is that when I show up sometimes as my messy self, I let other people be their messy self as well, and that we're still worthy of love. But I do have to love myself the most so that when maybe somebody does look at me and go like, I'm not going even near that. It's okay for me to be like, that's okay, because I know who I am and I'm okay with that. And that's just their interpretation of what they're seeing of me in this moment. So that is my life change going through all of these deep conversations. And so I know Debbie and I are here to give some kind of tips and strategies for learning to love yourself more. So I'm going to let her to start off with how do we get love?
How do we get love? So I really, it's about how we give. We want to give from our overflow instead of from our cup. And today's whole talk is about how do we give love to ourselves. But this is the thing, is if we're looking at talking about coming from our overflow, when you are a 10 out of 10 for your own self-love, then you become a source of overflow love. And so that's the question I think that Karan asked, is how do we get to knowing when we are a 10 out of 10? So one of the things is that once we have an abundance of love and we get to that 10 out of 10, we're not dependent on external, I guess, validation for affection and love. And so at that point, it's no longer that we're looking for conditional love. We're actually looking we're actually looking at unconditional love. And that could be a hard thing to come from, because sometimes I think I'm giving love unconditionally, but deep down, there's conditions there. I know that my kids are a really good example of that. I think I'm giving unconditional love by doing certain things, but then the resentment starts to creep in when I don't get something back. And I'm not looking for something big back, but I just want them to help out a little bit. And when they don't, then I can start getting frustrated. So, yeah, that's conditional love. Anyway, so once you fall in love with yourself, and I think everybody has to figure out what that point is. Then you have the resources to allow you to give freely to others without depleting yourself and what you are. And so, like I said, love, true love is unconditional. It's given freely without any expectation of receiving something in return. And when you need love, that implies that there's a lack, which can lead to conditional love. And when there's conditional love, you're creating dependencies and opportunities for disappointment. And you cannot love fully that which you need. So because that creates attachment and expectation. So that's part of that conditional love. And by filling your own cup first, you can give love freely and unconditionally, as you're not seeking to fill a void in yourself. And so I think, Karan, part of it is that you have to figure that out on your own. When are you at a point when you can love freely and not expect anything back? So let's imagine now that you have only $2 to your name, and you take the $2 and you go because you're homeless, or you're pretty much down out of your luck, and you go into the library and you put your $2 on a table, and someone comes along and takes one of the dollars from the table. At that point, you're going to be pretty devastated because this is a big loss. You just lost half your money. And you're probably going to run after that person and be upset at them or expect something from them. But imagine now you take that last dollar you have left and you buy a lottery ticket. Not that I'm saying you should buy lottery tickets, but you end up hitting the jackpot and you win $1 million, and you cash it in and you take all that money like you would and put it on the table in the same spot. And that same person that took your dollar comes by and takes another dollar. This time, when they take a dollar, you're probably not affected by it because you have the abundance, you have the overflow. And so this is kind of the same. And so when you get to that 10 out of 10, where you have enough for yourself, that's when your cup is full, and it will less likely impact your self-worth and your self-love. So again, we're looking to be a 10 out of 10. We want to get to a point where we have unconditional love, where we're not expecting anything in return when we give love. We aren't like, basically, if you have $1 million, or those dollars that are on the table are like criticisms and negative comments that are coming from other people. So when you have abundant self-love, somebody takes in a dollar, or they do give you a negative comment or a criticism, you're less likely to be impacted by those comments and those criticisms. And so think about it for yourself. How full is your cup right now? Are you a 10 out of 10 for your cup and how much love you have, or are you somewhere less than that? And I think it can vary over time, but hopefully we can give you some ways that you can get to a 10 out of 10 and start practicing so that you can be there. Deb, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Okay. Well, Debbie kind of hit on how do we get love and what's the best way to start, and that is to fill your own cup first. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about what stops us from loving ourselves, right? And I talked a little bit about how, like, my childhood and growing up, the things that were happening in my household weren't congruent with what was happening when we left the house. And it was like, okay, so we're going to put on this show. All right, here we go. We're going to do this show every day, right? And it's not that I always felt like I was putting on a show, but the reality is there were things happening that shouldn't have been. And yet we all just continued as if nothing was happening, right? And so I learned to hide a part of who I was instead of embracing my whole self. So, just like for me, my lack of self love, self worth started when I was a child. And that is the case for most people. It develops in your childhood when you're expected to be perfect, right? Why don't you be more like Billy? Why don't you be more like Susie? She always has her homework done. Her hair is always combed. She's so helpful, right? All of these comparisons happen. And as you're listening to it as a child, it's not that you may or you may not actually think to yourself, oh, well, I guess I'm not good enough, right? And this is obviously not the intention of most parents either. They're not trying to make you feel unloved. They're not taking away their love, but you interpret it as them taking away their love and saying you're not good enough. So another example could be maybe your family has everything in the world, right? No worries, whatever. But your parents aren't emotionally available. They're just not very present with you. And that can lead to also feeling overlooked, not worth anybody's time, right? And again, I don't think parents are doing this intentionally. I'm actually pretty sure they're not. But you end up feeling and interpreting that lack of attention as being not worth loving. You still have to prove yourself, and you're just overall inadequate. And unfortunately, what happens is we take all these childhood thoughts and beliefs because we're children, we don't understand everything, and we carry it into our adulthood. And as children, we develop what we'll call like coping mechanisms or ways to overcome these things, right? And for some people, it's less severe, but you still might carry some of that with you. And for other people, it's very severe and it's very intense. And they really walk around feeling worthless and unlovable. And what we have to do here is just dismantle that whole belief system. But the first part of that is you just have to become aware, like, all right, let's take a look at all these negative things I say about myself, right? And each of you would be doing this for yourself. But like you have to challenge the negative beliefs. One great question, and I do invite you to write this down for yourself to use for later. One great question you say, like when you hear yourself saying that negative thing, like, oh, I'm not very good at math. Oh, I'm a horrible gardener. I'm the worst girlfriend. Ah, I'm the worst parent, right? Or fill in whatever. I'm not good at dot dot dot. I'm not worthy of their attention because dot dot dot, right? And then the next question or the first question after you say that to yourself, and I hope you stop saying those things to yourself, is I want you to write what else has to be true? If that's true, what else has to be true? And I think reflecting on that really helps us reframe it like, okay, I'm the worst mom. Well, that would also mean that like I don't take care of my kids. I'm not there for them. um, they're starving for attention, food, clothing, housing, the basics. Okay, my children have the basics. All right, I'm not the worst mom ever, right? A second tool there too would be what if one of your really good friends came to you and said whatever it is you're telling yourself, right? Think about that. If my best friend came to me and said, I'm just the worst mother, you won't believe what I did. I was supposed to pack a lunch for the field trip today and I didn't do it. I'm the worst, right? Now, if I'm saying that to myself, I'm like, oh man, every other mom probably packed a really great lunch and they're going to have so much fun. And I forgot. I'm the worst. But if my best friend comes to me and tells me this, I say to her, oh, things happen. You know that the other kids are going to share with your child, right? We have really lovely children and they're going to share, and your child might be a little upset with you, but they also know that you just made a mistake. You're usually very good about these things, right? I'm going to be kind and I'm going to be loving. And that's how we have to talk to ourselves. So next time you're feeling a little down on yourself, start berating yourself for this, that, or the other thing, why you're not worthy, right? Talk to yourself like you're your best friend. Encourage yourself. Give yourself some grace and, a little leniency, right? Um, and the last part, well, not the last part, I could probably go on like all day about this, right? How to love yourself more, because this has really impacted me. But there are, I always tote journaling as a great way to grow. And in this case, I would recommend journaling about your awesomeness. Like just write a little note, get yourself a little notebook, or you could do it on your computer if you like. I moved my journal, but I have a little journal, and in it every day I try to write 3 things that make me awesome today. And those could be as fabulous as like, I woke up on time, went to work, and I was kind to that one coworker, right? It could be bigger. It could be I finished the big project that I wanted to today. And it could be, even as you said, like, oh, I saw somebody struggling today and I helped out. I'm awesome, right? And this isn't to feed your ego, like, I'm so freaking amazing, right? But you do want to feel good about yourself. And it's okay to recognize that you're a good person and you're a lovable person and you're a loving person. So I think those things will help. And one thing you can do also, I know I have a lot of things. I seriously could talk all night. All right, I'll try to finish up here soon. But anyways, just because this is one that really irks me, like when things happen or when people say things, right? Or when people have said things and we internalize them and now we feel like we're less valuable. And people say, oh, don't take it personally. Now, this statement alone used to set me off. I'd be like, what do you mean don't take it personally? How could I do anything but take it personally? You're talking to me. That's pretty personal, right? And then I realized what not taking it personally meant. And it helps you reframe things that are happening to you instead of internalizing and starting to carry all that around. And so what you do now is use it to empower yourself. And you recognize that the other person is showing who they are. They might be making statements to you, at you, or about you, but they're really showing you who they are. They're seeing the situation through their lens. And again, I could go on about going ahead and, continuing a conversation to get to the root of it. But the bottom line is don't internalize all that. Don't take all of that on yourself and let it mean that you're not worthy. I will end with a quote that I found, and it is by Oscar Wilde. And it says, to love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. And I think that that is pretty cool because if you can have the lifelong romance with yourself, everyone else you bring into your life is going to be an addition to the love story instead of taking away. So I hope you guys found some useful tips in there. And I know Debbie is now going to kind of bring this home, this self-love.
All right. So I'm going to talk more because you started it, but more about bolstering our self-love. And I want to start by saying that, at least me, when I was growing up, I don't know about anybody else, loving yourself had a negative connotation in a way. Basically, when you're loving yourself, it kind of was like you were arrogant or it wasn't a good thing. And so it's tough because when I think of, like you said, saying I'm awesome, I kind of go to that point of, well, that means I'm arrogant, or I'm full of myself, or I'm conceited. But it isn't. I think it's important for us to recognize how that we are good, and we are all that we seek, and everything that we need is inside of us, and we are all born genius. We just have to realize and recognize that. And that's the tough part, because we go through life being told that we're not a genius, and all these limiting beliefs. And there's a whole class just on limiting beliefs. But it's so important that we do have positivity for ourselves. And I'm going to do a couple of quotes. My first one is Wayne Dyer and Bruce Lee have both been noted to say this, but as you think, so shall you be. And so a big part of bolstering our own self-love is how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to others, and being positive and cutting out the negative. So number one for cutting out the negative, stop looking and paying attention to negative media. The media bombards us with so much unrealistic, negative messages that are going to erode our self-esteem. So watch how much time you're spending on social media, how much time you're spending listening to negative news, negative entertainment. And it's not just negative, but it's unrealistic comparisons. So my kids will watch shows where these people are, I'm sure, are going on these boat cruises that they're whipping out $20,000 for a tip. And they're seeing that like it's normal. Okay. So this is an unrealistic comparison for my kids, or people who are, when I was growing up, a woman was supposed to weigh like 105 pounds. And I never weighed 105 pounds and got a real poor body image because of that. So be careful of how much time and how much energy you're spending on the media. And I was told one time that if you want to cut out all world wars, turn off the news. And if the news is meant to find you, it will find you. The other one, we talked a little bit, Deb talked about it a little bit, is getting rid of the negative self-talk. And this is really a profound impact on our self-perception and self-worth, even though we don't realize it. So when you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself, turn it around. I'm not good enough. No, maybe I'm just learning, or I'm capable and worthy. And my daughter actually called me on this, and I really became much more self-aware. We were looking at, we were talking about videos and stuff. And I said, well, I'm not very good at taking pictures. And she said right away, Mom, stop with the negative self-talk. I didn't even realize I was saying it. But what can I say instead of I'm not good at taking pictures is I'm just learning how to pose so I can take pictures. And failure, there is no such thing as failure. Failure is part of growing and learning. And so if you are failing, you're doing something right because you're growing and learning. The other thing is to surround yourself with a positive peer group. Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so if you are spending your time with people who are putting you down or who are negative by the virtue of who they are, then you need to find yourself another peer group. Not always easy, but it's an important thing. And I found, like, when I was working, I'm a pretty positive person about work and getting things done. But I didn't even realize that I was getting sucked into all the negative talk at work. It just kind of happened. And well, I'm out of that now because I retired from my job. but sometimes you can't get out of that. But if you notice it, maybe you can walk away or say to people, look, I really don't want to be involved in this negative conversation, gossip, things like that. And one of the things that really drew me to the Elite Mentorship Forum, or the EMF, was the fact that it really promotes the peer group. And once you finish taking the 6-month course, you become an alumni. And I have never seen a group of people that actually do talk to each other. They do communicate. Deb and I have a group of friends that we meet with every Sunday morning, well, Sunday at noon, our time, and they're from all over the world. And it's so nice to talk to people who are very similar, have the same kind of outlook on life. So find yourself a positive peer group if you can. A really important thing. And then maybe find yourself a positive mantra. You can make your own. One of the ones I like is feel great now. Say, I'm enough. I am worthy of love. I deserve happiness. Whatever resonates with you, but find yourself a positive mantra, and that will help you out a lot. And I just got back from visiting my family in Edmonton, Alberta, woo-hoo-hoo. And on the plane, they go through the whole thing about make sure you put on your oxygen mask before you help someone else. It's the same thing in our life. We have to nourish ourselves first before we help somebody else. And having all that positivity can really help you with your self-love. So I want to encourage you to take proactive steps to enhance your own self-love and find something that we said today. Just pick one thing. Maybe it's the journal of awesomeness. Maybe it's just paying more attention to your negative self-talk. Maybe you're going to stop watching the news every day of the week. You can get a lot of time back from that. But take one of the tips that we said and put it into action and do something different. Deb,
Love it.
back to you. I guess
All
this
right.
is the time when we should ask if there are any questions.
That's exactly what I was going to do. So, Karan, I wanted to see if there was anything you or Sony or anybody else out there that would like to either add to our conversation or questions you might have. Did
Nothing
anything we say about the self-love and where do you set the boundary? Did any of that resonate with you, Karan? About when is it being selfish? Did that help at all?
Yes. I think it's about identifying the point of abundance. Like the moment you realize that you're abundant, you can probably start helping other people as well. So yeah,
Good.
that can answer my question. Plus, also like the fact that you mentioned about paying attention to the negative self-talk that you're doing, because that's really important. It sounds like being a security guard to your mind. You don't let negative thoughts just creep into your mind, right? So it's like, and I think that's the whole idea behind meditation as well. It's like being more self-aware, being more conscientious. Yes.
Okay, very
That's
good. Thank
important.
you.
And I love the comment that we have about telling others and showing them appreciation helps to love yourself as well. I love that. It's such a great hinted comment.
I think it's true because I feel like when have you ever shown any kind of kindness or love to someone where it didn't kind of make you feel better too, right? Right. And again, that could be seen as selfish, but only if that's the only reason why you're doing it. Again,
Yeah.
if you give love with no expectation of anything in return, you're still going to feel good, but that wasn't your expectation. Like you could do something really nice for someone and feel great about, and they're just like, get out of my way. Why are you bothering me? Right? But you don't have to take that on, right? You just walk away feeling good, like, oh, I did a good thing. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
what their response is because you weren't expecting anything. So
I know one of the things that I do similar to this, I don't say anything, but when I feel myself getting frustrated, maybe somebody cut me off in a lineup or something, or in traffic, and I don't want to get negative about it, because it's only my getting angry at that person is only impacting me. I try to give them self-love. Sometimes it's not easy, but I just try to give them some love from my heart, just in my head. I don't say anything, but I'll just say, okay, I love you. And hopefully that helps them. And it does help me to kind of get over that whole thing. So it's a really good tip. Having gratitude is one of the best things that we can do for ourselves, for sure. Love that as
yes,
well.
love that. Yeah. So yes, and that is one of the things too. Yeah, it's hard to be feeling less than or whatever when you're focusing on all of the things that you're grateful for. And again, and I think Karan pointed this out, coming from a place of abundance, right? Like you caught on to that. Like, yes, when you're coming from a place of abundance, there the little bit that people take here or there through whatever their actions may be doesn't impact you because you have so much. So I love that. That's something that resonated with you. All right, guys. Sony, I see you put your camera back on. Did you want to share an insight that resonated with you or anything before we close out this meeting?
Yeah, I think, yeah, like I was thinking about the same thing, where when we go on the flights, that the attendants talk about putting your own oxygen mask first. Yeah, similarly, we have to do the same for ourselves. If we don't, eventually we will black out, or I mean,
Right?
so
We'll
we
be
will
useless.
not be able to help either ourselves or anyone else. Um, and in in a philosophical aspect, I believe that there's no really any difference between me, myself, and all the other people. We are all just one, and the difference is just an illusion. Um,
Beautiful.
but of course, in practical life, that doesn't really work like that. And that's why we need a lot of work to love ourselves.
Absolutely. But that's a beautiful sentiment. And I think when we also can come to that realization is that, and it kind of goes with what I said though, like what you say to your best friend is different a lot of times than what you will say to yourself. You are your worst critic. You were so hard on ourselves, right? So that kind of comes with it. If you're willing to give your friends all that grace and love when they say I'm struggling or I messed up, again, treat yourself with that same love and respect. And yes, if we can come to the conclusion, that yes, we are all connected. So loving myself is loving you is loving myself. And we learn to do that with healthy boundaries, um, and setting standards, but also being just open to other people where they are in this moment. Yeah, so I thought that was really beautiful. Great share. Thank you so much. And I think that's going to bring us to the end of tonight's session. I'm so grateful for everyone that joined us. And I love the participation that made it so much more enjoyable. I hope everybody was able to get something out of this sharing space. And as a closing for this evening, I invite um, those of you that are on this and those of you who are watching it later to join us Saturday, where we are going, Debbie and I at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time are going to host the Create a Life You Love workshop. We have done this in the past, but we also recommend that you kind of revisit it periodically on your own. So feel free to join us again, even if you have already done it with us. And it's a hot pen exercise, which really gets us thinking about what we want from our life. And I think Debbie stated it like this: it's the ultimate sign of self-love is to create your future instead of it just allowing. So that is a process that we will go through this Saturday, and we invite you to join us. Just keep watching all these posts for invitations and links, and we hope to see you there. All righty.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for
Thank you
joining.
so much.
Thank you.
Great to
Bye.
see everyone. Have a great
Bye.
evening.
See you soon.